I cheated on my husband and thought he would forgive me, but I was wrong. I thought I could make him forgive me. I thought there was still a part of Ethan that remembered the good times, the years we'd built together, and how I was still the mother of his children. But that all changed the moment I walked into the coffee shop. She was sitting there, her hand casually resting on his. She had that carefree look I used to have when I was with him. My heart sank. Who is she? How long has this been going on? And then it hit me. This wasn't just someone new. This was the proof that Ethan had already moved on. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how this all started. Ethan and I had been married for 12 years. He wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my partner, the person who made me feel like I could conquer anything. We met in college. I was the shy bookworm, and he was the guy who could light up any room with his smile. He was confident, funny, and genuinely kind. A rare combination. We fell hard and fast. He supported my dreams, encouraged me when I doubted myself, and always reminded me that we were a team. Our wedding day was one of the happiest moments of my life. Standing there, promising to love and honor him forever, I never imagined we'd end up like this. But as the years went on, life got in the way. The kids came, 2 beautiful boys who became our entire world. Ethan worked long hours to provide for us, while I juggled raising the kids and trying to keep the household running. Somewhere along the way, we stopped being a couple and became more like co-workers managing a chaotic household. I told myself it was normal. Every marriage has its ups and downs, right? But deep down, I felt invisible, unappreciated, like I was just a part of the scenery in Ethan's life. That's when I met Kyle. Kyle was a co-worker, a charismatic guy who always knew the right thing to say. He noticed me when Ethan didn't, complimented me on things Ethan had stopped noticing years ago. At first, it was harmless. I told myself it was just nice to have someone to talk to, someone who made me feel seen. But the harmless texts turned into late-night conversations. The conversations turned into meeting for coffee. And eventually, coffee turned into something I swore I'd never do. I cheated. At the time, I justified it to myself. Ethan doesn't care anymore. He barely looks at me, let alone touches me. I'm just a ghost in his life. Kyle made me feel alive again, and I clung to that feeling like a drowning person grabbing a lifeline. But the affair didn't last. Kyle was never going to be the solution to my problems. He was a distraction, a fantasy. When it ended, I felt hollow. The guilt hit me like a freight train, but instead of owning up to what I'd done, I buried it. Then Ethan found out. I'll never forget the look on his face when he confronted me. It wasn't anger. It was devastation. He didn't yell or throw accusations. He just asked, "Why?" And I didn't have a good answer. All I could do was deflect. "You never paid attention to me. You made me feel like I didn't matter. If you'd been there for me, maybe I wouldn't have looked somewhere else." Even as the words left my mouth, I knew how cruel they sounded. But part of me believed them. Part of me still does. Ethan moved out a week later. He didn't yell, didn't beg me to stay, didn't even seem angry. He was eerily calm, like he'd already made up his mind. He said he needed space to figure things out, but I knew what that really meant. For weeks I tried to fix things. I suggested therapy, begged him to come home, and even wrote him a letter pouring out my heart. But every time I reached out, he seemed further away. That's what led me to the coffee shop. I'd been texting Ethan, asking if we could meet to talk. To my surprise, he agreed. I thought maybe this was my chance, my opportunity to finally get through to him. I arrived early, nervously sipping my latte and rehearsing what I would say. Then I saw them. She was younger than me, maybe mid-20s. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves, and she had this effortless grace about her. Ethan looked at her the way he used to look at me, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to storm over, demand to know who she was and what she was doing with my husband. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there frozen, staring at them like an outsider watching someone else's life. When Ethan finally noticed me, his expression shifted. He didn't look guilty or ashamed. He looked resolved. He walked over, leaving her at the table, and sat down across from me. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Her name's Rachel," he said. "We've been seeing each other for a couple of months." It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. A couple of months. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "A couple of months?" I repeated, my voice rising. "So while I've been trying to fix things, you've been off with her?" Ethan sighed. "You had your chance to fix things, Allison, but you didn't want to fix us. You just wanted to absolve yourself of guilt." His words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but deep down, I knew he wasn't. As Ethan walked back to Rachel, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing the one person who had always been my safe place. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. As Ethan walked back to Rachel, I felt like the world had shifted beneath me. The man I'd built my life with, the father of my children, was sitting just a few feet away, smiling and laughing with another woman. It was a moment of clarity I wasn't ready for. Ethan wasn't coming back. But I couldn't let it end like this. I had to fight for us, for everything we had built. That night, I sat alone in the house we once shared, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were on our wedding day. His face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in years. There were pictures of our boys as babies, of family vacations, of lazy Sunday mornings spent tangled up on the couch. I texted him. We need to talk. Not about Rachel, not about blame. Just us, please." He didn't reply that night. I stared at my phone until the screen blurred from my tears, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The next day, Ethan came by to pick up the boys. It was his weekend with them, and I'd spent the morning packing their bags, trying to hold myself together. When he walked in, I could tell he was trying to keep things civil, but there was an air of finality about him that scared me. As the kids ran upstairs to grab their toys, I stopped him. "Ethan, wait," I said, my voice shaking. He turned to me, his expression guarded. "I know I screwed up," I started. "I know I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But we've been through so much together. Doesn't that count for anything?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Allison, this isn't about what we've been through. It's about who we are now. And right now, I don't think we're good for each other anymore." His words felt like a slap. "So that's it? You're just giving up? Throwing away 12 years like it doesn't matter?" "I didn't give up," he said, his voice rising for the first time. "You did. The moment you decided to cheat, you gave up on us. And now you're acting like I'm the bad guy for moving on?" I felt the tears welling up again, but I forced them back. "You don't even want to try? What about the kids? Don't they deserve parents who at least try to make it work?" Ethan hesitated, and for a moment, I thought I was getting through to him. But then he shook his head. "The kids deserve parents who are happy, even if that means we're not together." After he left, I collapsed on the couch, replaying the conversation in my head. Was I really the one who gave up first? Or was Ethan's detachment the thing that drove me into Kyle's arms? I hated how easily he seemed to be moving on, how quickly he'd found someone else while I was still drowning in the mess we'd made. But the truth was, Ethan had always been better at keeping his emotions in check. I was the one who acted on impulse, who let my feelings dictate my decisions. In the weeks that followed, I tried everything to get him to see that we were worth saving. I suggested counseling again, begged him to come over for dinner with the kids, even wrote him another letter, this time pouring out every emotion I'd bottled up since the day he left. He read it. I know he did because he sent me a short reply. "Ethan, thank you for sharing this, but I don't think anything can change how I feel right now." It wasn't the response I was hoping for, but it wasn't a complete rejection either. I clung to that tiny sliver of hope, convincing myself that if I just tried harder, he'd eventually come around. Then came the day I finally snapped. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Ethan was dropping off the boys after his weekend with them. Rachel was in the car, and as he helped the kids unload their bags, I could see her watching us through the window. I waited until the boys were inside before confronting him. "Does she always have to be here?" I asked, crossing my arms. Ethan frowned. "She's not doing anything wrong, Allison. Do you even think about how this looks? How it feels for me to see her sitting in our driveway?" He sighed, clearly frustrated. "This isn't about you, Allison. It's about me trying to move forward." "And what about me? Do I not get a say in this? You're acting like I'm the only one who made mistakes in this marriage." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're not. I know I wasn't perfect. I know I could have been more present, more supportive, but none of that justifies what you did." I felt the tears coming again, but this time they were mixed with anger. "You think you were a saint, Ethan? You think it was easy living with someone who worked 60 hours a week and barely looked at me when he came home? Maybe if you'd been there for me, I wouldn't have needed someone else to make me feel alive." His expression hardened. "You can justify it however you want, Allison. But at the end of the day, you made a choice. And that choice destroyed us." After that, something shifted. I stopped texting him, stopped trying to fix things. I told myself it was because I needed to focus on the kids, but the truth was, I couldn't handle any more rejection. But even as I tried to move on, I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel, about the way Ethan looked at her, the way he seemed so happy. It wasn't fair. He was supposed to be grieving like I was, feeling the same pain and regret. Instead, he was building a new life while I was stuck in the wreckage of the old one. A few weeks later, Ethan came by to pick up the boys again. This time, he asked if he could come in for a minute. I hesitated but eventually let him in. "I wanted to talk to you," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table. "About everything." I crossed my arms, not sure where this was going. "Okay, talk." "I know this has been hard on you," he started. "And I don't want you to think I don't care. I'll always care about you, Allison. You're the mother of my kids, and we had a lot of good years together. But I can't keep pretending that we can fix this. Too much has happened, and I don't think we can ever go back to the way things were." His words were like a punch to the gut, but I forced myself to stay composed. "So that's it? You're just done?" "I'm not doing this to hurt you," he said softly. "I just think it's time we both let go." That night, after the boys were asleep, I sat in their room and watched them for a long time. They were the only good thing to come out of this mess, the only reason I hadn't completely fallen apart. As much as I hated to admit it, Ethan was right. Holding on to the past wasn't helping anyone, not me, not him, and certainly not our kids. It's been 6 months since that conversation. Ethan and Rachel are still together, and while it still hurts to see them, I've learned to focus on myself and the boys. I've started therapy, taken up painting again, and even joined a local book club. Do I regret what I did? Yes. But more than that, I regret not appreciating what I had until it was gone. And as much as I wish things had turned out differently, I'm learning to accept that some mistakes can't be undone, and some people, no matter how much you love them, aren't meant to stay in your life forever.